We only had 3 days in London, and with so much to see, we knew we wouldn't be able to fit everything in. But there was another challenge. This wasn't just a trip to London. It was a girls' trip with my teenage daughter. And if you're a parent of a teenager, you'll probably understand what I mean when I say that impressing a teenager isn't always easy. This was my daughter's first time in London. I'd visited London before, so I already had some idea of which places would be worth our time and which ones might not live up to the hype. So, our goal wasn't to see everything, it was to find the places that would make these 3 days unforgettable. Our trip actually started before we even checked into our hotel. I'd booked tickets for Horizon 22, so straight from the airport that's where we headed first, and honestly, it was the perfect way to start our London adventure. The weather was on our side. No rain, no fog, which is never guaranteed in London. And the views were incredible. Horizon 22 is located inside 22 Bishopsgate, the tallest building in the City of London. The viewing platform is on the 58th floor, around 254 meters above the city. Standing there, it genuinely felt like London was right beneath our feet. You could see famous landmarks in every direction, and it was one of those moments that made us stop and simply enjoy the view. What makes Horizon 22 even more impressive is that it's completely free to visit. You just need to book your tickets in advance on the official website. My daughter was genuinely impressed, and that felt like a great start to the trip. After Horizon 22, it was finally time to check into our hotel. When I was planning this trip, I knew that with only 3 days in London where we stayed would have a huge impact on our experience. That's why I chose Moxy Piccadilly Circus. The hotel is just a few minutes from Piccadilly Circus, right in the heart of London. Many of the places on our itinerary were within walking distance, which meant we could spend less time on transport and more time exploring the city. After a day of traveling, the welcome drink was a lovely surprise, and my daughter immediately fell in love with the design of the hotel. The hotel has a fun, modern feel with colorful interiors, creative details, and lively common spaces that make it feel very different from a traditional hotel. Choosing this hotel was one of the reasons we managed to fit so much into such a short trip. After checking into the hotel, we headed out for our first evening in London. One of the places we wanted to visit was Chinatown. I've always found it fascinating how, within just a few minutes' walk, London can feel completely different. One moment you're in the middle of Piccadilly Circus, and the next you're surrounded by red lanterns, Asian supermarkets, restaurants, bakeries, and dessert shops. We spent some time wandering through the streets, looking at all the different foods on display and stopping to try a few snacks and desserts along the way. I wouldn't say Chinatown was the most impressive place we visited during the trip, but I really enjoyed the atmosphere. It felt like a small piece of Asia right in the middle of London. Our next stop was the Lego store in Leicester Square, and honestly, it felt more like an attraction than a shop. The first thing that caught our attention was the full-size Aston Martin from the James Bond films, built entirely from Lego bricks. Seeing a life-sized car made from thousands of Lego pieces was pretty impressive, even for someone who isn't a huge Lego fan. As we walked through the store, there were giant Lego models everywhere, including an impressive Big Ben built from thousands of Lego bricks. We originally thought we'd spend just a few minutes there, but it turned out to be much more interesting than we expected. Even if you're not planning to buy anything, I'd still recommend stepping inside if you're passing through Leicester Square. Just across the square we stopped by M&M's World, and once again it felt much bigger than we expected. This isn't just a sweet shop. It's a four-story attraction dedicated entirely to M&M's. Every floor is packed with colorful displays, giant M&M characters, merchandise, and more chocolate than you could possibly imagine. One of the most interesting things is that you can create your own mix of colors from huge walls filled with M&Ms. To be honest, it probably isn't a place I'd go out of my way to visit on its own, but when you're already exploring Leicester Square, it's a fun place to step inside for a few minutes and experience the sheer scale of it. The next morning, we started the day with breakfast at Japanese pancakes. I'd seen these pancakes all over social media before, so I was curious to try them for myself. Unlike traditional pancakes, Japanese souffle pancakes are incredibly light and fluffy. They're made using whipped egg whites, which gives them their signature soft cloud-like texture. When they arrive at the table, they almost wobble when you touch them, and I can definitely see why they've become so popular on Instagram. Whether they're worth the hype is probably a matter of personal taste, but they were a great way to start the day. After breakfast, we headed to Greenwich, and instead of taking the underground, we decided to get there by Uber boat. Honestly, I think it's one of the best ways to reach Greenwich. Not only do you avoid crowded trains and multiple transfers, but you also get to see London from a completely different perspective. As the boat traveled along the Thames, we passed some of the city's most famous landmarks, enjoying views that you simply don't get from the underground. It felt less like public transport and more like part of the sightseeing experience. By the time we arrived in Greenwich, it already felt like we'd seen another side of London, and the atmosphere there couldn't have been more different from the busy city centre. It was quieter, greener, and much more relaxed. One of the reasons we wanted to visit Greenwich was because it's the place where Greenwich Mean Time or GMT originated and where the prime meridian passes through. What makes Greenwich such a great place to visit is that many of its most famous attractions are all within walking distance of each other. Our first stop was the Royal Observatory. Perched on top of a hill overlooking Greenwich, it offers one of the best views of London's skyline. It's also home to the Prime Meridian, where you can stand with one foot in the Eastern Hemisphere and the other in the Western Hemisphere. Inside the observatory, we learned how people measured time long before smartphones and the internet existed, how sailors navigated across vast oceans, and how early astronomical instruments helped them determine their position at sea. It was also fascinating to discover why Greenwich became the place the world chose as its reference point for time. Just a short walk from the observatory, we arrived at the painted hall, and the first thing both of us did was look up. Photos and videos really don't prepare you for the scale of this place. The walls and ceiling are covered in enormous paintings, and everywhere you look, there's something new to notice. What surprised me most was learning that a single artist spent nearly 20 years creating this masterpiece. It's often called Britain's Sistine Chapel, and once you're standing inside, it's easy to understand why. Even if you're not particularly interested in art, it's one of those places that leaves a lasting impression. After visiting the painted hall, we walked over to the Queen's house. One of the things I wanted to see was the famous tulip stairs. It's hard to believe that this staircase was built more than 400 years ago. Despite its age, the building feels surprisingly bright, elegant, and modern. From there, we continued to the National Maritime Museum. Unfortunately, the planetarium at the Royal Observatory was closed for refurbishment during our visit, but there was a temporary planetarium experience inside the museum. Sitting beneath the dome and learning more about the stars, planets, and the universe beyond Earth was something we both really enjoyed. After a full day exploring Greenwich, we headed back to the hotel to rest before our final day in London. Our third day in London began with a walk to Buckingham Palace. As it was close to where we'd had breakfast, we decided to stop by and take a look. I'd visited Buckingham Palace before, so it wasn't one of the highlights of the trip for me. There were plenty of people gathered outside, watching the guards and taking photos through the gates. It's one of London's most famous landmarks, and for first-time visitors it's certainly worth seeing. For me, though, it felt more like a pleasant stop on our morning walk than a destination in its own right. After spending some time around the palace, we made our way to the National Gallery. The gallery houses an impressive collection of world-famous paintings, with room after room of artwork to explore. As we wandered through the exhibits, I realized that places like these are often best experienced with a guide or as part of a tour. Many of the paintings have rich histories and interesting stories behind them, and without that background, it can be difficult to fully appreciate their significance. Neither my daughter nor I know a great deal about art, so after exploring for a while, we decided to move on. Our next stop was Covent Garden, which turned out to be much more our kind of place. There was so much happening: street performers, musicians, shops, cafes, and people everywhere. It felt lively, entertaining, and full of energy. We made one more stop that had been on my daughter's list for a while. She'd seen videos of number 79 coffee and mousse on social media and really wanted to try their famous mousse desserts. The cafe is known for creating adorable animal-shaped desserts that almost look too cute to eat. We chose the bear and the puppy. Not only were the desserts incredibly cute, but they also tasted great. It turned out to be a fun little stop and one of those experiences that my daughter was especially excited about. After that, we headed to the Museum of Illusions, and this ended up being one of the most fun experiences of the trip. The museum is filled with interactive exhibits and optical illusions designed to trick your brain and challenge the way you see the world. We spent a lot of time taking pictures, trying out the different illusions, and laughing at the results. Both my daughter and I had a great time, and we left with some of our favorite photos from the entire trip. For dinner, we decided to try something completely new and headed to Teo Hot Pot. As soon as we sat down, it became clear that this wasn't going to be a typical restaurant experience. Instead of ordering a ready-made meal, you build it yourself. First, you choose your broth, then you pick from a wide selection of meats, seafood, vegetables, mushrooms, noodles, and other ingredients. Everything arrives at your table raw, and you cook it yourself in a pot of simmering broth right in front of you. At first, it felt a little unusual, but after a few minutes, we got the hang of it and started experimenting with different combinations. What I liked most was that the meal felt interactive. We weren't just sitting there waiting for food to arrive. We were choosing ingredients, deciding what to cook next, and trying different flavors throughout the meal. It felt more like an activity than just dinner. By the end of the meal, we were already saying that it's something we'd happily do again. It turned out to be one of the most memorable dining experiences of our trip. Anna, we recently visited London. What was is the best for you in this trip?
I like the Museum of Illusions because the results were really funny and we could take lots of pictures. I also like going to cafes such as Farmer J for breakfast, lunch and dinner. And I also liked the painted hall, it was really beautiful.
Yeah, it's all?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.